AITA for not covering my friend's meal when she ordered more. She then even invited me to a bachelorette party and after it was over asked me to pay for the food. I'm honestly still a little heated about this, and I'm trying to figure out if I really was in the wrong here, because one of my friends, let's call her Jessica, clearly thinks I am, and she hasn't exactly been subtle about making that known. So, here goes. This happened a few days ago, right after midterms, and I really just need some outside perspective. So for context, I'm in college, and like a lot of people right now, I'm on a budget. I work part-time, my parents help where they can, but money doesn't exactly grow on trees. I'm careful with how I spend, especially when it comes to eating out. I'm not the friend who orders the salad with no dressing and lemon water, but I also don't go all out unless it's a birthday or something special. I usually keep it chill, especially when I know it's a casual get-together. Anyway, after our last midterm of the week, a group of us decided to go out to eat. It wasn't anything fancy, just one of those chill, sit-down spots where you order at the table but pay at the end. The kind of place with decent food, fair prices, and a menu big enough that everyone can find something they like. There were 7 of us, I think. Maybe 8. A mix of close friends and a few friends of friends who sometimes join in when we hang out after class. I had already kind of mentally committed to keeping it cheap. I had a rough estimate in my head of what I could spend that week, and going over it just wasn't an option. So I ordered a pasta dish that was on special and stuck with water. No appetizer, no dessert, no drinks. I wasn't the only one keeping it simple, 2 or 3 others also just got basic meals and water or soda. But Jessica, oh, Jessica. She went full 3-course dinner mode. She ordered this loaded appetizer that she even offered around the table, like, hey, you guys want to try this, which felt generous at the time but now I'm seeing it through a different lens. Then she got one of the most expensive entrees on the menu, plus a cocktail, and then capped it all off with a dessert. Like, she didn't hold back at all. And good for her, honestly. If she wants to treat herself after a hard exam, who am I to judge? But I definitely noticed it was a lot more than the rest of us were doing. The meal itself was fine. We laughed, we talked about the exam, made plans for the weekend, normal stuff. No one said anything about how we were paying. In fact, it didn't even cross my mind to talk about it because, in every group setting I've been part of, especially when people are clearly ordering different things, we all just pay for what we got. It's not even a debate. The server comes, someone asks for separate checks or we just pass the receipt around, do a little mental math, toss in some cash or Venmo each other, and move on. Easy. So the check comes. It's all on one bill, and before anyone says a word, Jessica just kind of grabs it and says, super casually, let's just split it evenly. I looked at her and I was like, wait, what? I thought we were all paying for what we ordered. She just goes, it's easier this way, and then adds, it's what we always do, like this is some unspoken rule I'm suddenly violating. Except, no. That is not what we always do. Not even close. We literally never do that unless we're at a pizza place or somewhere where we all got the exact same thing. I told her I only brought enough to cover what I ate, plus tax and tip, which was true. I wasn't being stingy, I had already factored in a solid tip. I just didn't budget to be paying for someone else's cocktail and dessert. Jessica gave me this look, like I had just kicked her puppy or something. Then she rolls her eyes and says, it's not that deep. You're being cheap over a few bucks. Except it wasn't a few bucks. I ran the numbers later out of curiosity, and if we had split it evenly, I would have paid almost double what my food cost. That's not a few bucks, that's a whole extra meal. And I'm sorry, but if you're going to go all out, you need to own that. Don't expect the rest of us to subsidize your feast. I stood my ground. I told her again I was just going to pay for what I ordered, and then I put down cash for my meal and tip. A few other friends kind of shrugged and went along with splitting it evenly, probably because they didn't want the drama, or maybe they just didn't care. It's their money, their choice. But I stuck to mine. Jessica didn't say much after that. She paid her share of the split check, and we all left. But since then, she's been super passive-aggressive. Like, cold shoulder, one-word replies, accidentally leaving me off of texts kind of passive. And the cherry on top. I found out she told one of our mutual friends that I embarrassed her in front of everyone and made her look greedy. Which, wow. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I just calmly said I wasn't paying for what I didn't order. If anyone was making things awkward, it was her, trying to suddenly change the vibe and guilt people into paying more than they agreed to. But now, somehow, I'm the bad guy because I didn't want to fund her extra 3-course meal. I've been second-guessing myself since, because I genuinely didn't mean to cause a scene or make anyone uncomfortable. But I also don't think I should have to pay extra just to avoid awkwardness, especially when someone makes a last-minute decision like that without even checking in. So, am I the asshole here? Was I really being cheap, or was I just standing up for what I thought was fair? Update 1. So I honestly thought things between me and Jessica would just fizzle out after that dinner drama. I figured we'd both cool off, maybe get a little space, and things would either return to normal eventually or we'd naturally drift apart. No big confrontation, no dramatic friendship breakup, just quiet distance. But of course, that's not what happened. About a week later, out of the blue, Jessica texts me like absolutely nothing ever went down. No mention of the restaurant incident, no acknowledgement of how weird or tense things were between us afterward. She just sends me this bubbly, cheerful message that said, "Hey, want to grab sushi Friday?" My treat. I remember staring at my phone, confused. It felt so random and casual, like she was extending an olive branch, but with a smiley face and spicy tuna on the side. I sat there wondering if this was her version of smoothing things over, pretending the whole thing never happened and offering to take me out as a peace offering. I hesitated. I really did. I even reread the message a few times just to make sure I wasn't misinterpreting anything. My treat, that's a pretty straightforward phrase, right? It felt like a small gesture, maybe even an apology in disguise, and I figured, alright, maybe she realized she overreacted, and this was her way of patching things up without actually saying sorry. So, against my better judgment, I said yes. Big mistake. Friday rolls around, and we meet up at this cute little sushi place near campus. Not super fancy, but definitely not cheap either. It's one of those cozy spots with warm lighting and jazz playing softly in the background, the kind of place where you go when you want to catch up with someone and enjoy a chill meal. I told myself I'd keep it light, I wasn't trying to repeat the last dinner fiasco. I ordered 2 basic rolls and a bowl of miso soup. Nothing extravagant, just enough to enjoy the evening without pushing any financial boundaries. Jessica, on the other hand, clearly did not come with the same plan. She started off by ordering not 1 but 2 appetizers, and not the small kind either. I watched as the waiter brought out these beautifully plated dishes that looked more at home in a 5-star restaurant. Then she ordered 2 of the pricier specialty rolls, like the ones with 12 ingredients, sauces drizzled all over, and a little garnish on top for flair. She followed that up with 2 cocktails, each fancier than the last, complete with fruit skewers and little umbrellas, and, to top it all off, she got a dessert. One of those lava cake situations with ice cream melting on the side. The whole time I'm just sipping my miso, chewing on a piece of cucumber roll, and mentally calculating how much all of that must be adding up to. But I kept my mouth shut. I didn't want to be tense or weird, so I smiled, nodded, responded to her stories, and did my best to enjoy the night. I thought, fine, maybe she's just being generous tonight. My treat, those words kept echoing in my head like a promise. So I let myself relax, just a little. Then the check comes. The server sets it down gently on the table, tucked inside that little leather folder. Jessica opens it, glances down, and without missing a beat, looks up at me with this half-smile that felt way too familiar. Then she says, super casually, like we had already agreed on it ahead of time, "Okay, so it's $84, we can split that." I blinked. I literally blinked, like I was trying to reboot my brain. I said, "Wait, I thought you said this was your treat." And she just laughed. Actually laughed. Not in a, I made a joke, kind of way, but in this condescending little giggle, like I was the one being ridiculous. Then she said, "Yeah, but I meant like us treating ourselves," with this little shrug, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I was floored. Completely stunned. Because first of all, who invites someone out, says, "my treat," and then turns around and expects a split check? And second, how was this happening again? After everything that went down at that first dinner, after all the awkwardness and tension and side-eye, how was I sitting here, once again, being guilt-tripped into paying for more than I owed? I told her, calmly, that I'd only pay for my portion. I wasn't rude. I didn't raise my voice. I just said it plainly, because I wasn't about to get trapped in another one of these situations where I walk away resenting her and kicking myself for not standing up for what's fair. Her smile dropped. She let out this exaggerated sigh, one of those full-body sighs where the eyes roll and the shoulders slump dramatically. Then she said, loud enough for the nearby table to hear, "Wow, you really don't get how friendships work." And that did it for me. Because if she really believed that friendships were about manipulation, financial ambushes, and pretending generosity just means shared bills, then maybe we didn't have a real friendship to begin with. I didn't respond. I didn't argue. I just pulled out my card, paid for my 2 rolls and soup, left cash for the tip, and stood up. I paid what I owed and left feeling like I just walked into a trap, again. Update 2. A few days after what I now call Sushigate, I started getting these texts from Jessica again. This time, they had a warmer tone, softer than usual. It was like she was trying to press a reset button on the whole mess without directly addressing any of it. She sent a few messages throughout the day, little things like, "Hope your week's been better," and, "Let's not let dumb stuff mess with our friendship." Then, that evening, she sent the invite, a girls' night in, at her place. She said she was making pasta, had a bottle of wine ready, and wanted to just chill and reconnect like old times. She even ended it with, "Don't worry, no checks involved this time," complete with a laughing emoji, like we were both in on some harmless little joke. Despite everything that had happened, I was tempted. I mean, the first restaurant incident felt like a miscommunication, and the sushi thing, well, okay, that was a mess. But here she was now, inviting me over for what sounded like a casual, low-stakes hangout at her place. No restaurants. No bills. Just pasta, wine, and Netflix. I thought maybe, just this once, we could hit reset. I figured I'd play my part too. I picked up a small dessert from this bakery near my apartment, nothing fancy, just a box of cookies I thought we could nibble on while watching TV. It felt like a nice gesture, especially since she was cooking. So I showed up that night with the cookies and a tiny bit of optimism. Her place was cozy, candles were lit, some indie playlist was humming in the background, and she'd actually gone all out with the pasta. She had a salad, garlic bread, and even put the wine in actual glasses instead of mugs like she usually does when we hang out. I started to let my guard down. It genuinely felt like one of those laid-back, no-pressure nights we used to have before all the weird money drama started creeping into everything. We spent a few hours eating, drinking, watching Netflix, and gossiping about people from our classes. It was familiar and easy, and for a moment, I thought we were genuinely reconnecting. I even thought I'd been too harsh, maybe she really had just had a few off days. Maybe we were moving past all the awkwardness. She didn't bring up sushi, the restaurant, the split checks, none of it. I thought that was a good sign. I was wrong. As the night wound down, I started gathering my things. I thanked her for the dinner and said I'd get going since I had class early the next morning. I was putting on my coat and reaching for my bag when she casually, so casually, drops a line that stopped me in my tracks. She said, "Oh, by the way, can you Venmo me $25 for the groceries and wine?" I literally laughed. I actually laughed out loud, because I thought she was kidding. It had to be a joke, right? After all the emphasis she put on this being a chill, no-stress hangout, after that line about, no checks involved, after inviting me over, how could this be anything but sarcasm? Except she wasn't joking. She looked completely serious. Like, not just serious, mildly annoyed that I hadn't already offered. I blinked at her, still half smiling because I was trying to figure out if this was some kind of weird, late-night prank. But no. She just stood there waiting, like her request was the most normal thing in the world. I told her, calmly, that she invited me over, said it was her treat, and that I even brought dessert. She crossed her arms and replied that hosting and cooking isn't free, and that it's just common courtesy to help cover the cost. She said, word for word, that she cooked and hosted, and asked if I thought that was free. I felt my jaw tighten. I told her that if that's how she feels about hosting, she should be upfront about it beforehand, not drop the expectation after everything's eaten and the night's winding down. She just rolled her eyes and said I was making it weird again. That was her phrase, making it weird. Like I was the problem for not wanting to pay for something I was never told I'd be paying for. At that point, I was just tired. Not angry, not even surprised anymore, just tired. I picked up my dessert box, now half full, and said goodnight. I walked out of her apartment without another word, my stomach twisting, not from the wine or pasta, but from the sinking realization that this friendship had turned into something that constantly left me feeling manipulated and off balance. Later that night, as I was brushing my teeth, I got a notification. Jessica had sent me a $25 request on Venmo. The caption dinner, I declined. Update 3. After that last encounter, the one where I left her apartment without saying much and declined her $25 Venmo request for dinner, I figured that was it. I genuinely thought whatever friendship Jessica and I had was officially over. There was no dramatic goodbye, no huge fight, no formal unfollowing on social media, just silence. A weird, empty silence that somehow said more than any words could. We didn't speak for weeks. No texts, no check-ins, not even a passive-aggressive meme in the group chat. And honestly, I didn't miss her. Things actually felt calmer. I hung out with other friends, focused on school, got back into a steady rhythm. There wasn't any tension hanging over me, no awkward financial ambushes, no subtle guilt trips for refusing to fund someone else's lifestyle. I thought, good, clean break. We'd had our moments, and now it was over. Then, one afternoon, I got a text from Rachel. Rachel's one of those friends who somehow floats between every social group and still manages to stay neutral in all the drama. Sweet, funny, low-key, a total peacemaker. She messaged me and said Jessica had been feeling like I was mad at her and wanted to talk things out. Rachel said Jess told her she felt like I had misunderstood where she was coming from, and she hoped we could clear the air. I didn't respond right away. I just stared at my phone, debating whether it was worth reopening that particular can of worms. The last few hangouts with Jessica had felt like emotional booby traps. No matter how casual things seemed, there was always some twist at the end. A check slid across the table, a Venmo request, a sigh followed by, "You're making it weird." I didn't know if I wanted to risk stepping into that energy again. But Rachel offered to mediate and said we could meet somewhere neutral, just to talk. Not a dinner invite, not a hangout, just a conversation. So we met at a campus cafe. The kind with the squeaky chairs, overpriced lattes, and windows that fog up from all the steam. I got there first and grabbed a booth. Jessica showed up a few minutes later, expression unreadable, holding her drink like a shield. Rachel arrived right after, settled between us, and kicked things off like a guidance counselor trying to keep two stubborn teens from swinging at each other. Jessica started out cold. Polite, but cold. Her responses were clipped, like she'd rehearsed what she was going to say but didn't really want to say it. I matched her energy, sipping my tea and waiting to see if she was actually going to own anything or just spin the whole thing as one big misunderstanding. For a while, it felt like the latter. She kept talking around things, vaguely referencing how we'd both made assumptions, and how things escalated, but never directly addressing the actual problem. But eventually, something cracked. Her voice softened and she said she might have taken things a little personally. She explained that in high school, her friends always split everything, meals, snacks, drinks at parties, even when someone hosted. She said it was just their unspoken rule, and that it carried over into how she interacts with people now. I listened, but I wasn't going to let that be the whole explanation. So I asked her, point blank, why she kept inviting me places if she expected me to cover part of her tab every single time. Her answer came after a long pause. She said, "I just assumed you'd catch on eventually." Those words hit harder than I expected. There was no shame in her voice, just this tired honesty, like she had finally run out of ways to dance around the truth. Then she told us the real story. Apparently, Jessica had lost her weekend job a couple of months ago. The coffee shop she worked at cut staff, and she hadn't found anything else since. She was embarrassed. Not because she lost the job, stuff like that happens, but because, as she put it, she didn't want people to think she couldn't keep up. So instead of scaling back or saying no to social plans, she leaned harder into them. She didn't want anyone to ask questions or suspect anything, so she made it seem like things were normal, maybe even more than normal. And when the bills came, she figured if she just acted confident enough, no one would question splitting things evenly. Quietly, without saying it out loud, she'd been trying to spread the cost around. That was the phrase she used. I sat there, letting it sink in. On one hand, I felt bad for her. No one wants to admit they're struggling, especially not to their friends. And the pressure to keep up appearances, especially in college when everyone's pretending they've got it together, is very real. I told her that sucked, and I meant it. I was genuinely sorry she felt like she couldn't talk to anyone about what was going on. But I also told her that what she did wasn't okay. I told her that manipulating people into covering her expenses, without ever being honest about why, wasn't just inconsiderate, it was a betrayal of trust. I told her she made me feel like I was being punished for having boundaries, like I was a bad friend for not playing along with her unspoken plan. I said I would have been happy to spot her here and there if she had asked, but the way she went about it made me feel like a walking wallet instead of a friend. To her credit, she really listened. No eye-rolling, no sarcasm. She apologized, genuinely apologized, for putting me in those situations. She said she understood now why I was upset and that she'd stop inviting people out unless she could actually afford it. She admitted she needed to start being more upfront about her financial limits and stop assuming everyone else could pick up the slack. We didn't hug it out. There were no tears or I love yous. But something settled. A quiet understanding. Rachel, bless her, managed to get us both to crack a small smile before we parted ways. Since then, Jessica and I haven't hung out one-on-one. And I'm okay with that. Things are civil, we'll say hi in passing, send the occasional meme in the group chat, but the days of surprise bills and awkward tension are over. I've drawn my lines, and she seems to respect that now. I don't know if we'll ever be close again, and I'm not really trying to force it. What matters is that I got clarity, I got closure, and I got my boundaries back in place.